The death of actress Natalie Wood has captivated the public for decades, sparking intense speculation and theories that continue to this day. On November 28, 1981, Wood's lifeless body was discovered floating in the waters off Catalina Island, California, just hours after she had been seen on her boat, the Splendor, with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, and co-star Christopher Walken. Initially ruled an accidental drowning, the circumstances surrounding her death have been shrouded in mystery, with many unanswered questions and several theories suggesting that there was more to the story than a tragic accident. Born in 1938, Natalie Wood was one of Hollywood's brightest stars, known for her roles in films such as West Side Story, Rebel Without a Cause, and Miracle on 34th Street. Her career was flourishing, and she was regarded as one of the most talented and beloved actresses of her time. But her personal life, especially her relationships, were marked by turmoil and tension. Her marriage to Robert Wagner was particularly troubled, and their relationship was often subject to media scrutiny. Despite their ups and downs, the couple reunited and were spending time on their yacht, the Splendor, in the waters off Catalina Island when tragedy struck. On the night of her death, Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken were aboard the boat, having spent the day socializing and enjoying the picturesque scenery. According to Wagner, Natalie had expressed a desire to leave the boat and return to shore. In the early hours of the morning, Wagner claimed that he went to bed, leaving Natalie and Walken alone on the deck. The events that followed remain unclear, but what is known is that by the time morning came, Natalie Wood was gone. At first, authorities ruled her death as an accidental drowning. It was suggested that Wood had fallen into the water while attempting to board a dinghy, but the lack of evidence and suspicious circumstances surrounding her death quickly raised questions. There were conflicting accounts of what happened on the night of her disappearance, and her body's condition, found with bruises and a gash on her head, suggested that there may have been more to the story. This suspicion was only fueled by Wagner's conflicting statements about the events leading up to Natalie's disappearance. Many people began to speculate that Natalie's death was not an accident. Was she deliberately pushed into the water? Was there foul play involved? The lack of a clear answer only made the mystery deeper, and as new theories emerged, the investigation became more complicated. Wagner and Walken both became central figures in the investigation, with both men being questioned about the events that took place the night of Natalie's disappearance. However, neither man was ever charged, and the case remained open, with no new developments for years. One of the most controversial aspects of the investigation was the behavior of the individuals involved. According to some accounts, Wagner was reportedly upset when he found out that Natalie had spent time with Walken, and some sources claimed that the two men had been at odds over their personal relationships with Natalie. This information led some to believe that there was more to the story of Natalie's death than the official narrative. Could the tensions between Wagner, Walken, and Natalie have led to her untimely death? Was there an altercation that led to her being pushed overboard? As the years went on, various individuals came forward with their own theories and insights. Some speculated that Wagner had played a role in his wife's death, either intentionally or unintentionally. Others believed that Walken's involvement in the incident should be further investigated. One of the most striking aspects of the case was the ongoing secrecy and reluctance of those involved to share the full details of that fateful night. Questions remained unanswered, and the case became a subject of intense media attention. As the investigation into Natalie Wood's death continued, new details and theories began to emerge, complicating the official narrative. While the authorities initially classified her death as an accidental drowning, the inconsistencies in the stories of the people involved, combined with the mysterious circumstances surrounding her death, raised many questions that were never adequately answered. The first theory that gained traction was that Natalie had accidentally fallen into the water while trying to board a dinghy. According to Wagner's statements, the two had argued earlier in the evening, and she had been upset. He claimed that she was drinking wine and had expressed a desire to leave the boat. It was then that she attempted to climb into the dinghy but fell overboard. This explanation seemed plausible to the investigators at first, and it was the story they initially believed. However, the lack of physical evidence to support this theory began to raise suspicions. For one, Natalie's bruises, gash on her head, and the fact that her body was discovered far from the boat contradicted Wagner's claim. Further investigation into the dinghy's condition only deepened the mystery. The dinghy, which was tied to the boat at the time of Natalie's disappearance, was found in a disheveled state. It appeared to have been untied and floating loosely in the water, suggesting that something unusual had taken place. Was it possible that the dinghy had been tampered with, or was there some sort of confrontation that caused it to become detached from the boat? The unanswered questions surrounding the dinghy only fueled further speculation. Another theory that emerged was that Natalie's death had been the result of a violent altercation. Some investigators suggested that the tension between Wagner and Walken, which had been building for months, might have reached a boiling point that night. Wagner and Walken had reportedly been at odds over their respective relationships with Natalie. Wagner, who had a history of jealousy and controlling behavior, may have been upset by Natalie's close relationship with Walken, who had been co-starring with her in the film Brainstorm. The media and public quickly latched onto this theory, creating a narrative of jealousy and love triangles that fueled sensational coverage of the case. Was this a crime of passion, driven by jealousy and anger? Was Wagner's relationship with Natalie so strained that it led to violence? Could Walken, in his own way, have played a role in the altercation? Was there a confrontation between the three that led to Natalie's death? The theory of a violent confrontation gained even more credibility when investigators discovered that Wagner had made conflicting statements about the events of that night. Initially, he told the police that he had fallen asleep on the boat while Natalie and Walken were still on deck. However, later versions of his account seemed to shift, and inconsistencies began to appear in his retelling of the events. Some investigators speculated that Wagner's hesitance to fully cooperate with the investigation was a sign of guilt. Others believed that the emotional toll of losing his wife had clouded his judgment, causing him to unintentionally withhold important details. As public pressure mounted, the authorities began to re-examine the evidence. One of the most significant discoveries in the case came when Natalie's body was exhumed in 2012 for further investigation. Experts noted that the bruises found on her body were inconsistent with the theory of an accidental drowning. The bruises and the gash on her head were more indicative of a violent struggle, suggesting that Natalie had been struck before being thrown into the water. The new findings from the exhumation reignited interest in the case, and the theories about the circumstances of Natalie's death began to shift once again. Could her death have been an accident, or had she been attacked by someone close to her? Was Wagner involved, or was there another suspect hiding in plain sight? These new questions created further uncertainty and division among those investigating the case. One of the most striking aspects of the investigation was the media's obsession with Wagner and Walken, who became the focal points of the public speculation. Both men had been questioned about their involvement in Natalie's death, but they were never charged. The investigation, which initially appeared straightforward, had become complicated by the media's sensationalized coverage and the conflicting narratives that had emerged. As new theories began to surface, the case seemed to grow more convoluted, and the truth appeared to slip further out of reach. In the years that followed, several new suspects and theories were proposed. Some believed that Natalie's death could have been the result of a random act, with an unknown person involved in her disappearance. Others speculated that she might have been involved in a struggle with someone on the boat who had taken advantage of her drunken state. Was there a stranger aboard the Splendor that night, or was the killer someone who had been close to her all along? In 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the investigation into Natalie's death, citing new information and leads that had come to light. The case was officially classified as a suspicious death, and investigators began to dig deeper into the evidence once again. Despite the renewed efforts, the case remains unsolved, and the questions surrounding her death continue to loom large. To this day, the disappearance and death of Natalie Wood remains one of Hollywood's most tragic and enduring mysteries. Theories abound, but no one has been able to provide a definitive answer to the question, did Natalie Wood drown, or was she murdered? The truth about her death may never be fully uncovered, but her story continues to capture the public's imagination. The Isdell woman, another unsolved mystery, and the Black Dahlia case, another iconic true crime mystery, are among the many cases that continue to fascinate and perplex us. As the years passed, the tragic death of Natalie Wood remained one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. New theories and leads continued to emerge, but the case never truly seemed to move closer to a resolution. The investigation had stalled, and the possibility of uncovering the truth about what happened on that fateful night seemed increasingly unlikely. The media's sensational coverage of the case, combined with conflicting theories and the mysterious circumstances surrounding Natalie's death, only deepened the public's fascination and confusion. The case took another dramatic turn when the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the investigation in 2018, citing new information and advances in forensic techniques. The initial decision to reopen the case was based on renewed interest, as well as the emergence of new evidence that had been overlooked or dismissed during the original investigation. The focus of the renewed investigation was not solely on the theory that Natalie had drowned, but rather on whether foul play had been involved. Despite new leads and fresh perspectives, the case remained unsolved, and the evidence continued to be circumstantial at best. One of the most significant developments came when new interviews with key witnesses were conducted. Robert Wagner, who had been married to Natalie Wood at the time of her death, was questioned again. His version of events, which had changed over time, raised new questions. Wagner's reluctance to fully cooperate with investigators, as well as his inconsistent statements, cast a shadow over the investigation. However, after being re-interviewed in 2018, Wagner maintained that he had nothing to do with Natalie's death, insisting that it had been a tragic accident. Despite his repeated statements of innocence, there were still doubts in the minds of many, including those who felt that the answers to the mystery lay within his testimony. Another key figure in the investigation was Christopher Walken, who had been aboard the boat with Natalie and Robert Wagner on the night of her death. Walken's involvement in the case had always been a point of controversy, as he was the last person to see Natalie alive before she disappeared. Walken had been interviewed by the police in 1981, but his responses were vague, and some felt that he was not forthcoming with all the details of what had transpired that night. In 2018, Walken was once again questioned about the events leading up to Natalie's death. However, like Wagner, he denied any involvement in her death, and there was no evidence to suggest that he had been responsible. Walken's refusal to speak more openly about the incident only fueled further speculation, leaving the investigation in limbo. Despite the ongoing investigation, one of the most frustrating aspects of the case remained the lack of physical evidence. There were no fingerprints or other forensic evidence that could definitively link any of the individuals aboard the Splendor to Natalie's death. The lack of solid proof made it impossible to draw any conclusions about what had actually happened. The absence of forensic evidence also raised the question of whether the crime scene had been tampered with or if key evidence had been overlooked during the initial investigation. Could the killer have covered their tracks so effectively that there was nothing left to find? Or was it simply that the investigation had been poorly managed from the start? As the years passed, the theories about Natalie's death continued to grow in number. Some suggested that she had been involved in a struggle on the boat, which had led to her falling into the water. Others believed that she had been deliberately pushed off the boat by one of the men who had been with her. Some even speculated that Natalie had died as the result of a drunken accident, a tragic series of events that had spiraled out of control. Each of these theories presented a different version of the story, but none of them provided a definitive answer. One particularly chilling theory that gained traction over the years was the idea that Natalie's death had been part of a larger conspiracy. Some suggested that she had been killed because of her ties to Hollywood's elite, possibly as a result of an affair or some other secret that had been kept hidden for years. Others believed that Natalie had been the victim of a botched cover-up, where someone had tried to make it look like an accident but failed to do so convincingly. The idea of a Hollywood conspiracy was one that captured the public's imagination, but like all the other theories, it lacked concrete evidence to support it. Another theory that emerged in the 2000s focused on Natalie's relationship with Robert Wagner. Some people suggested that Wagner had been abusive toward Natalie, both emotionally and physically, and that this abuse had escalated to the point of murder. This theory was based on Wagner's troubled history with Natalie, as well as allegations of infidelity and violent behavior that had surfaced during their marriage. According to some, Wagner's temper could have led him to lash out at Natalie in a fit of rage, resulting in her death. While there was no direct evidence to support these claims, the theory continued to gain attention from those who believed that Wagner's true role in his wife's death had been covered up. As time went on, the investigation continued to be mired in confusion and conflicting theories. While the authorities were determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, they were also keenly aware that time was running out. With each passing year, the chances of solving the case seemed to diminish, but the case of Natalie Wood remained one of the most high-profile unsolved mysteries in Hollywood history. The name Natalie Wood became synonymous with tragedy and loss, and her death would forever be remembered as one of the darkest and most puzzling events in the history of Hollywood. The emotional toll on the people involved in the case was immense. Robert Wagner, Natalie's husband, had been at the center of the investigation for years, and he continued to defend his innocence in the face of mounting public pressure. His reluctance to fully cooperate with the authorities only fueled suspicions, but Wagner insisted that he had nothing to hide. For Christopher Walken, who had also become a key figure in the investigation, the ordeal of being linked to the case for so long was a heavy burden. Walken, too, continued to deny any involvement in Natalie's death and maintained that he had nothing to do with the tragedy. Despite their statements, the unresolved nature of the case left them both haunted by the past. As of today, the death of Natalie Wood remains one of Hollywood's most tragic and unresolved mysteries. Her death, shrouded in uncertainty, continues to captivate the public and spark new theories and investigations. Though much has been uncovered over the years, the truth remains elusive, and the mystery of how Natalie Wood died will continue to haunt the public imagination for years to come. Could she have truly drowned, or was there something more sinister at play? The question that remains unanswered is one that continues to fuel speculation and intrigue. Who, or what, is responsible for the untimely death of one of Hollywood's most beloved stars? As the years went by, new theories and suspicions about the mysterious death of Natalie Wood continued to emerge. The case remained an open wound in the history of Hollywood, with no definitive answers. Despite the renewed interest and the reopening of the investigation, Natalie's death remained an unsolved enigma. Theories about her death varied, with some people believing it was a tragic accident and others asserting that foul play was involved. As the years passed, the case seemed to grow colder, but the public's interest in the mystery surrounding her death never truly faded. In 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officially reopened the investigation, marking a significant shift in how the case was being handled. The department's new efforts to reinvestigate the case focused on gathering new evidence, re-interviewing witnesses, and considering modern forensic techniques that had not been available during the original investigation. New technological advancements in forensic analysis, such as enhanced imaging and DNA testing, provided hope that new clues could be uncovered, bringing fresh light to the case. However, despite these efforts, no new concrete evidence was discovered that would lead investigators to a definitive conclusion. Despite the lack of solid evidence, the renewed investigation provided an opportunity for more people to come forward with new insights. In the years following the reopening of the case, several individuals claimed to have information that could shed light on the circumstances surrounding Natalie's death. Among them were individuals who had been close to the family, and who claimed to have witnessed suspicious behavior in the days leading up to her death. Some reported hearing strange things, while others suggested that there were inconsistencies in the way the incident had been handled by the authorities. One of the most telling pieces of evidence came from the re-examination of Wagner's statements. Many investigators had always been suspicious of Wagner's behavior after the death of his wife. Some felt that his statements during the initial investigation were inconsistent and that he had been evasive when asked about the details of that night. In 2018, Wagner was once again questioned about the events of that night. He maintained that it was an accident, claiming that he had never been responsible for her death, but his evasiveness raised further suspicions. Could Wagner have known more than he was letting on? The possibility that he had been involved in a cover-up lingered in the background, though no direct evidence ever surfaced to substantiate this claim. Another significant theory that emerged in the years after Natalie's death was the idea that she had been involved in a love triangle. Some believed that her relationship with Wagner had been fraught with jealousy and turmoil, particularly because of her interactions with Christopher Walken. Walken, who was on the boat the night Natalie died, had always been seen as a key figure in the case. He had been questioned by police, but like Wagner, he denied any involvement in her death. The love triangle theory, though speculative, remained popular among those who believed that the events of that night could have been influenced by personal conflict and emotions. As the investigation progressed, some investigators began to suspect that Natalie's death might have been the result of a botched attempt at covering up a more personal tragedy. The theory suggested that Wagner and Walken had been involved in some sort of altercation, and that it had escalated into violence. Whether or not this theory was true was unclear, but it was compelling to some. The idea that Natalie had been caught in the crossfire of a fight between two men she had been romantically involved with raised questions about the nature of her relationships and whether they had played a role in her tragic end. The case also raised questions about the media's role in sensationalizing the investigation. The constant media attention, along with the public's insatiable curiosity, created a pressure cooker environment that made it difficult for investigators to pursue leads without the interference of outside influences. The media's portrayal of the case and the constant rumors and speculations only served to confuse the investigation. The constant reporting of conflicting theories and false leads made it nearly impossible to get to the truth. The public's desire for answers and their hunger for scandal only served to complicate the investigation further. Despite all the theories and speculations, the truth behind Natalie Wood's death remained elusive. Could it have been a tragic accident, as Wagner claimed? Or was there something more sinister at play, a dark secret hiding in the shadows of Hollywood's golden era? The theories surrounding her death remain a subject of fascination, and the case continues to be a prominent fixture in true crime discussions. As of now, the investigation remains open, with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department still examining any new leads that may arise. Despite the lack of conclusive evidence, the case continues to captivate the public's imagination. Theories and questions surrounding Natalie's death persist, with no definitive answer in sight. Was her death an accident, or was it murder? Did she drown as the result of a tragic accident, or was there foul play involved? These questions remain unanswered, leaving the case open and the mystery unresolved. Natalie Wood's death has left an indelible mark on Hollywood and true crime history. The haunting image of her life and tragic death continues to be a subject of intense public interest. The case remains one of the most famous and enduring mysteries in American history, and it is likely to remain unsolved for the foreseeable future. Despite the years that have passed, the memory of Natalie Wood's tragic death lingers, a symbol of the darkness that can lie beneath the surface of even the most glamorous lives. The legacy of Natalie Wood continues to inspire new generations of true crime enthusiasts and filmmakers who are drawn to the mystery of her life and death. Her case remains one of the most compelling and chilling in the world of unsolved mysteries, and it serves as a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of the unknown.